This conference will now be recorded.
Great. So up until now, we were looking at storage accounts. We initially started off with telling what exactly is a storage account used for. When I said storage account is now used for, let's say, storing data, that is in unstructured format. And then we said, okay, fine, there are different properties of a storage account like replications, access tier, and etc. And we said, okay, fine, this is fine creating storage account on the portal. But what if I want to create the storage account using automation? And we then said, okay, fine, we basically looked into PowerShell and we said, okay, fine, this is PowerShell. And we said, okay, fine, there's a better way in order to create infrastructure using something known as ARM templates. We saw JSON structure and we saw what is ARM templates and etc. Now, one question that I have for you all is that let's say I have a storage account. Inside the storage account, I went ahead and created something known as a container. So this is a container that is sitting inside the storage account. And what you did is that using, let's say, a storage explorer or using, let's say, the Azure portal, you uploaded blobs inside this particular container. So I'm telling blobs right now. So this is the actual data. Let's say you are a banking organization and you are uploading transaction details of clients and everything inside this particular container out here. Now, how do you ensure that the data is only accessed by people that you feel are authorized? How do you make sure that the data, in other way, if I put it, how do you make sure that this data that is sitting inside this particular container is protected? Anyone? So let's talk about a few scenarios here. How do you share this, or how do you share the data of a storage account to anyone? Let's say you have a developer in your team. How do you share, let's say, these details to a developer? Using what you do you share here?
Connection string we need to share, right?
Connection strings. Okay. What if the developer leaves the organization the very next day when you share the connection string? Question A. So I would say a better way to share it is a SAS token, shared access signatures. So when I say SAS, it's the same thing like shared access signature. We usually call it as SAS token, okay? Or shared access signature. I can give, let's say, a read write access and everything, and I can share it with, let's say, a couple of people out there. What if the developer takes that shared access token, gives it to someone else, and they try to access it, right? So my point here is that being on cloud, the first and most priority that I have is the security of my data, right? So it is very, very important that I make sure that this data is completely sealed off from the outside world, right? Completely sealed off with the outside world. I don't want anyone unauthorized to come in and visit my data. So can anyone give me any suggestion on what can I do here? Anything, or anyone? Allow only few IPs to access? Yes, I can do that. But let's say I have, I'm a very big organization. I'm talking about ICICI. I'm a very big organization and I did allow a few IPs. Let's say you are a developer, I allowed your IP and it's a work from home scenario. What did you do is that you went to a different place. Your IP is changed. Again, I have to update it. Let's say I have 10 thousands of employees who are migrating to different places. Is it not difficult for me? Like, is it not an administrative burden for me to change all these IPs again? Because I never know, because all the IPs that you're using is a static IP. Let's say we'll consider that scenario also. You have migrated to a different place, have taken your IP, I whitelisted it. Imagine you again move to a coffee shop or something like that close to your house and start working there. I will whitelist that IP also. That's now a public IP. So I am risking a lot of things out here. meaning you're working from a coffee shop, or you can be working from an airport, where whatever it is. If I'm whitelisting your IP, that means that I'm giving access to, let's say, the public internet. I don't like that. Like, I don't really like that idea of, like, kind of whitelisting IPs out here. So what I would say is that I would now start saying that, okay, fine. I will now put a virtual boundary across my storage account. So I'm talking about, let's say, a virtual imaginary boundary. So I'm building, let's say, in very layman term, a fence around it. I'm building, let's say, a fence around it here. And I'm saying these are four boundaries out here. These are four different boundaries out here. And people within this boundary, people within these four walls, can only access that particular storage account. Okay? People only within this space. Now I'm talking about something in a space. People within the space, or employees within the space, or applications within the space can access the data within my storage account. And now I call this space as a virtual network. Very importantly, now I call the space as a virtual network. Now, normally, what do you understand by the term network? Anyone? Anyone, guys? When I say network, what strikes your mind? Connection between something? Okay, I'll water it down a bit more. I'll say cell phone network. So, what strikes? You can
Transferring
communicate.
of data.
Transferring of data, meaning, very simply, if I say network, I say it is communication. For me, network is nothing but communication. Like, I have a career, like I'm using Airtel, someone can use something else, and I have your number. So I can call you. Now, your number is your address where I can give you a call. Simple. And in the same way, if I am telling it's a network, I'm now telling this is a virtual network, because this is not physical in nature. Unlike the physical world that we do have right now, this is virtual space. And this basically gives you something known as a virtual network space, right? Sorry. Now, my laptop is only able to talk to the router and a printer in this office, because they are in the same network. They're able to communicate with each other. They know each other's addresses. So one of the most important thing is that I'm telling is that when I am inside a network, I get something known as an address. Like, for example, if I hit and say, okay, fine, what's my IP? This is the address where I'm sitting in. This is, let's say, my identity. This is where I am sitting in right now. In the same way, I want to establish now a space inside which each and every resource here, like me, like the storage account, and etc., are assigned an address. An address here is an IP address using which they can communicate with each other. So this is where I bring in something known as a virtual network. So then how do I create it? What do I do with it? Let's see that. So I go into my resource group. Let's say I'll start creating a resource known as storage account. So I say create a new resource group. I'll say this is SRG in a location like ECS2. Storage account name again is like devstore ABC 000 USEs2. Standard, then I'll say it is LRS. I'll say advanced. And in here, in something known as networking, this is something that we ignored. We said we'll come back to it later. And right now, I am saying, sorry, right now, I am saying that this particular storage account is allowed to be accessed over the internet. I'm saying, okay, fine, you can basically go ahead and access the storage account over the internet. For now, I'll keep it this way. I'll say review and create. I'm just creating a simple storage account out here. Let's see what happens basically when I implement something known as a networking out here. So is everyone clear about what network is? Like what network is and what it does and etc. Is that clear? Is that established? So I haven't gone into the concept of a virtual network. We'll go into it because right now I'm just establishing or I'm just trying to take everyone into the same playing field, telling what really a network is. So again, if let's say in my office, my laptop is able to communicate with the router and the router is able to communicate with the printer, because each and every device here knows which address they are sitting in. It's the address, and this address is known as what? IP address. Each and every one of y'all, if you go to your home and just type in an IP, right, each and every one will have a unique IP address. That's the address of your system, meaning that's the address where you are sitting in or from where you are communicating with. So I'll say, okay, fine, go to the resource and let's put a sample container. And I'm saying create this container out, this container, and I'll just upload this out. So I'll just upload a few blobs out. Let's say I have a lot of files here, right? All these are my templates, PowerShell scripts, and etc. Now, if someone were to access it, I will just go ahead and provide, let's say, an access key or a connection string or a shared access signature, whatever it is. So I'll say access key. I'll take, let's say, the connection string out here, and I'll use a device like Microsoft Storage Explorer. And using the Storage Explorer, I will give the connection string, and I'll basically go ahead and connect with this particular storage device out here. So how do I connect with this, guys? Can anyone help me? How what to do? Using this Explorer, where should I go now? How do I connect it? Go to that particular connection dialog. Let's go to this connection dialog out here. We'll just allow it a second. And after the connection dialog opens, what should I select there? What should I select here, guys? Okay, blob container or storage account or service? Storage account. And what should I be selecting here? Connection strings. Say next and place the connection string here and say connect. And I have a connection established with this particular storage account, and I'm able to see every service like over here. I'm able to see every service. I mean, I'll be able to see every service over here, like the blob containers and everything. And I'll be able to go ahead and delete the data, upload the data, do whatever it is. And I should be able to in a minute. I should be able to see all the data here out here. So this is how the setup is right now, and I'll be able to basically go ahead and edit, delete whatever I can. But I don't want this to happen like this because this is all sensitive data. I don't want it to be exposed like this. So what I do is in here, I just type in networking and you have a tab known as security plus networking. I'll say, okay, go here. And here it says allow access from what? All the networks. I am not comfortable with this. So I'll say only the selected networks is where I need the access from. Now it's telling me, it's giving me two options out here. One, it tells you that add an existing virtual network or add a new virtual network. Now I haven't created virtual network in my subscription at all. So what I'll do is that I'll say, okay, fine. Since I do not have a virtual network, I'll go ahead and add a virtual network. Okay. Now it says it's asking me a couple of questions out here. So I'll just fill up details out here. First thing, the first of everything is called the name of the virtual network. So every resource has a name. So does the virtual network. I'll say it is a storage VNet. This is the name of the virtual network that I'm adding here. Second thing, it's telling me what is the address space. Now imagine you're constructing a wall against, or imagine you're constructing a wall around your storage account. Or let's say in a physical world, imagine you're constructing the actual wall. Now when I basically go to a contractor and tell him that, okay, fine, can you please construct a wall? What is the first question will he ask? What is the area? What is, let's say, the size of the area so that I can construct the wall accordingly? In the same way, now I'm trying to construct a wall out here, or now I'm trying to construct an isolated space out here in my Azure tenant. And now Azure is asking me, what is the space? How big or how small do you want, let's say, the isolated space out here? So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, fine. I'll put an address here. I'll explain what this is in a while. I'm saying, okay, fine. This is the area that I want. We'll see what is that. We'll see what is that number, how is that number, and etc. And I say, okay, fine. It is 10.0.0.0 /16. And it is telling me, okay, fine. You will get 65,536 addresses if you construct the space. Meaning that's the area of the basically that space out here. I'll go a bit down and I'll say, okay, fine, there is something known as a subnet out here. Let's look at what subnets and etc. are. Here, I'll just give a number. I'll say create. So this is the logic behind my creation. I'm just giving a few numbers. We'll talk about that numbers in a while. I'm saying, okay, fine, please construct a wall here around my storage account. And once this is validated, I'll go ahead and apply a save button out there. So let's give a second. It's going ahead and let's say creating, let's say, a virtual network. And once the virtual network is created, let's go ahead and hit on that particular save button out here. So did anyone here online, offline work with networking? Understand what are networks, what is their address space and etc. Anyone guys? Did anyone work with that? So I've selected this network. I've created a network, selected this network, and I'm saying add this network, and I'm saying save. So I just created a network, added that network here, and I'm saving this network out. And what happens right now is that let's refresh all. It'll take like about 2-3 minutes of time in order to get reflected. And now I'm trying to look inside, let's say the blobs inside that particular container, and this is the error that I get. It is telling me that, you know what, this is the actual error message. The request is not authorized to perform, something like this. Let's do one thing. I try to bypass it. Since I'm on the Azure portal, I'll say, okay, fine. I would want to bypass this out. Same error. The request is not authorized to perform because now my storage account is not an internet resource, it's an intranet resource within a network, and I am sitting in a public internet. I am sitting, let's say, in a public internet. So whatever request I'm making here, whatever request I'm making this to this particular storage account, this virtual network is not letting me go inside it, or this virtual network is not letting me make that particular request out there, and all the requests are being hit back. So this is the issue that I have, right? Or this is, let's say, the security what I established right now. But what is this address? Like, how did I create it? Excuse me. What is this address? How did I create it? How did I end up creating this out? There are two things out here. When I started creating this particular virtual network, the first thing it, very sorry about that, I have a very sore throat today. The very first thing it asked was the name of the virtual network, right? So it said the name, and I said the name was something like storage vnet. I gave it a name, and I'm saying the name is something like storage vnet out here. Then the next thing, guys, what did it ask for? Sorry, address space. It's telling you something known as an address space, and it said, okay, fine. I'm now telling that the address space will now decide how big or how small your network is. And I said I gave a number here. It's like 10.0.0.0 / 16. What does this number really mean out here? Is that now how many numbers do you see here after the dot? 4, 10.0, or how many digits you see here? 4. Since it's 4, it's known as an IPv4 addressing, Internet Protocol version 4. But what does this exactly mean out here? Is that this number is for you and me to understand that, okay, fine, it's a 10.0.0.0. But in a computer world, a server or a computer cannot really understand this. It needs to convert this into something known, or it needs to convert all these numbers into its own language. And the language of a computer is called a binary language, zeros and ones. It's called a binary language. Computer can only understand this. So let's try to convert this IP into a binary language. So what I'll do is that normally you will basically have a calculator where you can divide this by 2 by 2 and finally get a binary number. But I'll just say it is IP to binary converter. We'll have a lot of online tools out here. And I'll just put my IP here and I'll say convert to binary. And this is how the binary looks like. So the 10 in a binary is represented by 0 0 0 0 1 0 1 0. Zeros again, again 0. This 0 is again 0. This is again 0. Now, how many numbers are there between each and every dot, guys? Can anyone tell me how many numbers are there between each and every dot?
8.
8. So these are just not numbers. These are information that you can carry. If this is 8, it means that you can carry 8 bits of information. This is all, let's say, how do you carry information and etc. So each and every 8 here that you see you can have 8 bits of information. 8 bits makes something like 1 byte. So it is 1 byte of information. In total, how many bits of information that I can carry here? 8 into 4, 32. So in a 10.0.0.0, I can have what? 32 bits. And since these are 8, right? Each and everything is an 8. It's called an octet. Octa is 8. So it's known as an octet out here. So here you get somewhere around 8 into 4, 32 bits and 32 bits of information. But the thing here is that, can I use all those 32 bits? Can I basically go ahead and use all those 32 bits? Answer is no, you cannot do that. It's not allowed you, or it's not allowed for you to go ahead and consume all those 32 bits. You cannot consume it. Why is it? It's because this is an agreed upon standard across let's say the IT industry, that you cannot be using all those 32. So you have to declare what you want to use and what you don't want to use. And how do you declare it? This is the number that comes into place. I will say, okay, fine, these are the 32 bits of information, which is great. But I will want to now declare how many I want to use, how many I want to preserve. I will say it is 10.0.0.0 /16. I'm doing a /16 here. This /16 is called a subnet masking. Whatever you see after, let's say, the IP, and I put a /16, this is called this is called a subnet masking now. Now this entire address, right, 10.0.0.0 /16 is called an address space. It's not an IP address. It's an address space which will give you the IP addresses. And in a technical term, we call this as a CIDR block, classless interdomain routing. This is called as a CIDR address block out here. Now, what does the 16 mean out here? Now, 16 is 8 into 2. This is, let's say, a factor of 8 or a multiple of 8. So if I'm telling it is 16 and if I'm telling it is 8 into 2 is 16, it means that I am telling the system that, you know what, this 8, I'm calculating from the left to the right. It's from the left hand side to the right hand side is what I'm calculating. So this is the direction where I'm calculating. I'm saying this 8, which is the first one, this second 8, these both are static. I won't use them. This 8 and this 8, I will use them. These are dynamic. So now I'm telling that, okay, fine, I am following the IT convention. So I'm saying I am following the rule. So I am not going ahead and, let's say, consuming all those 32. I don't want to do that. I want to make sure to reserve something, and I'm reserving the first 8 and the second 8. Now what happens if I reserve the first 8 and the second 8? In terms of addressing, I'm doing what? First 8 represents what? This 10, right? Second 8 represents what? The 0. So 8 and 8. So I'm saying these two are static right now. So what happens to me in the form of addresses is that always 10.0 is static. This won't change. Your address that comes out of, or your addresses that come out of from this particular space will always start with 10.0 no matter what. I'll say, okay, fine. The first address that I get here is a 10.0.0.0, which is the first IP. Now I'm talking. Guys, online, can you hear me still? Can anyone confirm?
Yes, yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes, yes, we are able to hear you.
Great. So this is the first IP address. Now, can anyone help me? What can be the second IP address?
10.01.
10.0 is always constant. Dot 0 dot 1. The second IP address that is coming out of this particular pool. This is the address block, which is giving me the actual IP addresses out here. Third IP address will be 10.0.0.0.2. Fourth will be 10.0.0.3. Fourth will be 10.0.0. Or fifth will be 10.0.0.4, 5, so on and so forth. The maximum that you can go is 10.0.0.255. This is the last address in any IP. This is, let's say, the last. You cannot go beyond 255. So if I calculate this, how many addresses am I getting, guys, from 0 to 255? 256. So let's say it is 256. Now I can also have a combination of something like 10.0.1.0, because that also can change. And I can also have 10.0.2.0, so on up to what? 10.0.255.0. Again, how many I'm getting here? 256. I can also have a combination of 10.0.1.1, because both of them can change. Something like 10.0.2.1, meaning I can have multiple combinations out here. So how many in total I have here is I have a combination of 256 into 256. This will give you 65,536 addresses. That's what was the number there. This can give you 65,536. But but do you have to calculate this always this way? Is there an easier way to calculate it? Yes, definitely. If it is a 10.0.0.0 forward slash 16. Now what are the total bits here? 32. And how many are you reserving? 16. So since it's a binary, I would always say it is 2 power, because it's a binary 2 power 32 minus 16, because these are 16 are static, 32 is the total usable, which will give you 2 power 16, which is again 65,536. Let's say if I do a different address, 10.0.0.0 or just 24. Can anyone tell me what is the calculation here? 2 power 8.
2 power
Yes, 2
32.
power 8. What does that leave me with? 256. So this is 2 power 32 minus 24, which gives me 2 power 8, which is 256 addresses. Meaning, if I look at 10.0.0.0 I am telling first three are constant. 10.0.0 is constant. So I'm saying it is only 10.0.0.0 first address, 10.0.0.1 second address, so on and so forth, 10.0.0.255, which is what? This is the math that goes behind it. But do you always have to remember all these things? Like, do you always have to do this math? No, not really. You do not have to do it, but you have to understand the logic behind it. You have to understand the logic behind how it's calculated. The far more easier way. Do we do it in real time? Do we calculate all these things in real time? Not at all. Like, no one has so much of time to basically do a lot of math and all, because we are computer engineers, not mathematicians, right? We don't have to calculate all these things out. So how do you? What is a better way of doing it? It's like, let me go to an online website, and this is a website that you want to note down, which is called cidr.xyz, wherein I can say, okay, fine. I'll say this is my address. Everything that you see in color are static. Everything that you see in, let's say, which is in a gray color out here, is usable. And here you see the count, right? This is what I need. That's it. 65,536. How is it calculated in the back? It's doing the same thing. It's doing a 2 power 32 minus 16 and giving you something. And even if I do a 24 out here, 256, 25 less, 26 even less. Meaning, the greater the subnet masking is, the lesser will be the IP, right? The greater the subnet masking, the lesser is the IP address here. Any questions till here, guys? Anything that I can take till here? Anything? Anyone, guys, online, offline? Are you all understanding what we're talking about? So this is what we are looking at. We said address space, and we said what is an address space, and we decoded it. Any questions here, guys? Anything? Each and every IP to an application. Like I can take one IP from this pool, give it to my storage account. One IP from this pool, give it to a virtual machine. One IP from this pool, give it to another service. So I can protect all the services that are sitting on the cloud. This is what I'll end up doing. Any questions with this, guys? Anything with this?
So for subnet, how much limit we can give? We are having 32 bits. So earlier we given to 26. Can we give 32 or 32?
No, it cannot be 32. So the reason it cannot be 32, because
Okay,
let's
sir.
say you go to a shop, okay? You're buying a helmet or something like that. You see for an ISO stamp, you say this is ISO certified. If it is
Yes.
following ISO, it has to follow some standards. That okay, fine, this is the quality, this is how it is. In the same way, these are all private IP addresses. These fall under a standard known as RFC 1918.
Okay.
This is, let's say, the standard protocol, like ISO we have, what controls the private IP addressing in the online world. And let's see. If I go into, let's say, Wikipedia of this one, and if I, let's say, go here, there is something known as addresses that fall under this. And here, if you see 10.0.0.0 or something like this is the largest IP address. It's called a Class A address. In the same way, you have another private IP address which is 172.16, which is called Class B. You have something known as 192.168. It's commonly used for routers. When you configure a router, right, you'll hit this address 192.168.0.1, something like that. This is a Class C address. In a Class A address, the largest that you can have is 10.0.0.0 /8. So you cannot have below that. You cannot have 7, you cannot have 6. And then you have 172 addresses. The largest that you can have is /12. And 190 address is 192 address. The largest you can have is /16. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So if I do this, let's say if I want to create a virtual network, and let's give the basic details out here like test RG, and let's say this is test VNet. I go into IP addresses, and if I say it is 10 sorry 10.0.0.0 /6, Do you see what it's telling? 10.0.0.6 is not a valid CIDR address block. I cannot allow you to create this out because this is a private IP address, and this private IP addresses follow something known as RFC 1918 standard. So that's the reason I will not be basically going ahead and allowing you to create this out. So let's do one thing. I already have a virtual network, and the address of this virtual network is what, guys? It's a 10.0.0.0/16. This is the address basically what I have. Now I want to create another virtual network. Can I give the same address? Can I give a 10.0.0.0/16? Can I do that? Yes, no, maybe.
No.
No, no, we
Try
cannot.
doing. Mhm. Let's try doing that to test out our theory. I'll say test vnet. I'll say this is 10.0.0.0/16. Do you get a warning here telling that the address space overlaps with another address space? It's already taken. You can create, but not recommended to create because addresses should be unique. So what I'll do is that can I change this 10.0 with 10.1? If this is 10.1, what I'm doing here is that the first address that I had is 10.0.0.0 forward slash what? 16. And here the unique numbers are what? 10.0. Whichever IP address is starting, this is the unique. Now if I'm saying it is a 10.1.0.0 forward slash 16, the unique address here is what? 10.1, which is different from the above. So you're again creating another address space with 65,536 IPs. So this is how you create multiple virtual networks. If I want to create a third one, I can go for a 10.2.0.0 forward slash 16. Fourth one, 10.3.0.0 forward slash 16, etc. Fine. That was about virtual network. So you had a virtual network. I'm telling that this is a virtual network right now. So I'm saying this is a virtual network, and I'm saying virtual network is like an isolated space. Or now I'm telling virtual network is like, let's say, a house that gives you an isolation. So now I'm talking about this to be the actual house that is giving you isolation, that is holding all your resources. Let's imagine this to be a physical house. What is required inside the house, guys? If you're constructing a house, what is the first thing that you look at?
Rooms, block of rooms.
Rooms, very importantly, whether it's a 3 BHK or a 2 BHK, whatever it is. In the same way, virtual network represents just the outer house. You'll need the rooms to live inside it. Meaning, virtual network will give you the space, but you need rooms to put your resources into. Those rooms are represented by something known as subnets. A subnet is like a room inside, let's say, the virtual network. Or if I were to put in, let's say, in a technical term, a subnet is a slice of a virtual network. You are dividing your virtual network into something known as subnets, and you can use those subnets, not the actual virtual network out here. So I'm now telling that, okay, fine. Inside the virtual network, you can go ahead and create a subnet. Now I'll give you an ideal scenario out here. The space of my house is 1000 SFT. I'll tell I want a room of 1500 SFT. Is it possible? Not possible. Same way, if my VNet has an address of 65,536, my subnet should always have addresses less than 65,536. That's the logic of creating a subnet. Meaning, if you're dividing a virtual network, the subnet has to be in the same address space as the virtual network is. Meaning what you can do here is that now I'm saying, okay, it is 10.1.0.0. It's now telling me, please add a subnet, because without a subnet, I cannot create a virtual network. And it is asking me the name for the subnet. I'll say it is a test subnet. Now it's asking me, what is the address range of this particular subnet? I will say the first room that I'm constructing inside this virtual network of 65,536 addresses is 10.1.0.0/24, wherein I am saying out of the 65,536 available spaces, take out 256 and give me a subnet. Now, how many are left? Of the total addresses, how many are left now? If I take out one subnet, it is 65,536 minus 256. Meaning how many more I can go? Let's say if I create this subnet, okay? I'll say it is 10.1.0.0/24. Now here the concept is that if I do a 16, will it work? It will, because I'm giving one subnet with the entire space, meaning I have a house with one room, entire space occupied. It is not ideal, which is not logical at all. Let's do one thing. Let's say 14. Will it work? It won't, because the space of a subnet is greater than the space of a VNet right now. It cannot. So if your virtual network is 10.1.0.0/16, your subnet should always be greater than 10.1.0.0/16, 17, 18, 19, 20, whatever it is. So with that logic, I'm saying 24. I'm saying add. So I have a test subnet with 24 with 256 usable IPs. So I've created one subnet. Out of 65,536, I have taken out 256 right now. So the remaining is what? 65,536 minus 256, whatever number it is. I can now create another subnet. I say this is test subnet 1. And what should be the address that I need to give here, guys? Anyone? Okay, 10.1.0.0. So I'll say 10.1.0.0/24. Now it's saying the subnet overlaps with already this one. You have used this out. You cannot use it out.
25 or 26, more than 24, I guess.
I'm sorry, can you please come ahead?
/ it should be 25 or 26, more than 24.
Let's do that. Let's do a /25. It again says that this particular subnet overlaps with, let's say, 24. Because if I'm putting 24 here, all the numbers after that are consumed by 24 space. 25, 26, everything is consumed by it. Should be
So it
between
should be
16 and 20.
17 or 18. Yes.
Yeah, even if I put a 17 here, even that overlaps with it. Because this address is done. Meaning what is happening here is that this one, if I say it is 10.1.0.04/24, the first IP is what? 10.1.0.0. Second IP is what? 10.1.0.1. Meaning this number is changing right now. What if by this logic, I say the next subnet is 10.1.0.1? Will this work? It won't work. Then what if I say is 10.0.1.0/24? Now I'm getting a unique addresses here. The third subnet will be 10.1.2.0/24. In this way, I can go for 256 subnets with 256 IPs inside each. which will give me 65,536. This is the logic behind creation. So what I'll do here is this is what I'll do. I'll say it is 10.1.1.0 forward slash 24. I'll say add. My subnet 3 be something like 10.1.2.0 forward slash 24. This is how I'll keep adding my subnets. This is how I can divide my virtual network. Any questions till here, guys?
So we will add these subnets until 6536 IP
Is
addresses are
yes,
being obtained, right?
correct. That's occupied. So you can technically have somewhere around 256 subnets here, or 255, because I am considering test subnet as 0. So it's starting with 0, 1, 2, 3, so on, so forth to 255. So until you are exhausted with the entire address space, you can go ahead and add those subnets. Meaning, now imagine each and every address that is coming out of this particular subnet can be taken up by one particular resource. Meaning, you can have inside this addresses 65,536 storage accounts sitting in protected, or 65,536 different resources, a storage account, a virtual machine, everything. You can slot all these things out here. That's how big this is, or that's how big this address space really is. Okay. Does that answer your question? Someone asked this.
Yes, yes, it is. One more question here. So when we add these networking, these storage accounts here with the IP
Okay.
addresses, so will this be costing us on the subscription
Yes, it will be
when
costing you on the
they
subscription.
charge?
Yes,
Yeah.
it'll be costing you on the subscription. But technically, what happens is that you cannot have so many storage accounts inside a subscription. The maximum that you can have, let's say I am using a pay as you go, inside a region, the maximum that I can have is 250. I can go till 500. So what I will do is that, okay, fine, I have 500 storage accounts, I have 500 virtual machines, I have 500 some different applications, and I can put all of them inside this particular virtual network and protect them. Okay, this is what I would do. But yes, you will be charged on the subscription level. Does it answer your question, Farin?
Yes, yes, Kiran. Thank you so much.
Okay. Any more questions here, guys? You go ahead and delete what's it? Yes, you can delete it. You can delete the virtual networks as well. Editing. Okay, sir. You can edit it provided the subnet is not already allocated. If the subnet is allocated to some resource, you cannot edit it. If it is not, you can change it. You can, same way you can edit subnet, provided it's not already allocated to something. No, not really. Not mandatory. You can. I'm just dividing it equally so that it will be understandable easily. It's not mandatory. How much ever you can, not a problem. Until and unless it doesn't overlap with each other. If you're taking care of that, it's good enough. Any more questions here, guys? If no further questions, then we can go to close the session. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Nitin. Hi, Nitin. Yeah, yeah.